This episode contains themes of death, violence, revenge, and psychological trauma. Listener discretion is advised. Snow falls in the silence, but there is nothing peaceful about it. It settles heavy against the ground, as if the world itself was bracing for what was about to unfold. Across a frozen battlefield, two figures stand opposite one another, unmoving, unwavering. One burns with a quiet, relentless fury, flames licking at the edges of his form like a soul that refuses to rest. The other stands composed within the cold, the air around him crystallizing with each measured breath, his presence calm but unyielding. There are no words exchanged between them, no warnings, no hesitation. There does not need to be. This moment has lived before, replayed across blood and memory, carved into the very fabric of who they are. A clan reduced to ash, a family erased without mercy, a man dragged screaming into hell and brought back not as who he was, but as something forged in pain and purpose. Scorpion is not alive, and he is not at peace. He is a question that was never answered, a wound that never closed. Every step he takes carries the weight of what was taken from him. Every strike he throws is meant to remind the world that fire does not forget. And yet, across from him stands something just as unbreakable. Sub-Zero is not untouched by loss. He is not blind to the blood that stained his legacy. But where one man was consumed, the other chose to endure. He carries discipline like armor, restraint like a blade held just short of release. His name is not just his own. It is inherited, burdened, and reshaped into something better than what came before it. Fire does not forget. Ice does not forgive. And tonight, the past does not stay buried. It rises. It breathes. It demands resolution. And because when vengeance meets restraint, when fury collides with control, the outcome is never simple. The world does not walk away unchanged. Welcome to Chaos Crucible, where the battles are not just fought, but understood. This is where we go beyond the surface, beyond the spectacle, and step deeper into the truth behind every clash. Because this has never been just about who wins. It has always been about what the costs are to get there. Tonight, we are stepping into one of the most iconic rivalries in gaming history. Scorpion versus Sub-Zero. Fire against ice. Vengeance against control. Two warriors shaped by loss, standing on opposite sides of what that loss turned them into. But this fight was never just about power. It is about identity. It is about what remains when everything else has been stripped away. About whether pain defines you, or if you can define yourself in spite of it. To understand how this battle unfolds, we have to go back to where it all began. Hanzo Hasashi was never meant to become Scorpion. Before the fire, before the rage, before the endless cycle of death and return, he was a man with a life that had meaning. He was a husband, a father, and a loyal member of the Shirai Ryu. His world was not built on vengeance. It was built on connection, on purpose, on something real. What happened to him was not a battle. It was eradication. His clan was wiped out with brutal precision. His family taken from him without mercy or reason. In his final moments, there was no clarity, only pain, the desperate need for something to blame. And in that moment, he found it. He believed that Sub-Zero was responsible, and that belief came everything. It followed him into death, into the nether realm, where his soul was twisted and reforged into something unrecognizable. He was no longer just a man grieving what he lost. He became Scorpion, a specter of vengeance, bound to a single purpose. Revenge was no longer a desire, it was his existence. But vengeance is not clean. It does not heal. The longer it burns, the more it consumes, until there is nothing left of the person who started it. Hanzo did not just lose his family, he began to lose himself. Across from that story stands another, shaped by the same world, but carried differently. Kuai Liang did not inherit peace. He inherited responsibility. As the second Sub-Zero, he carried the weight of Lin Kuei and the sins attached to that name. He was raised in discipline, trained to control not only his abilities, but himself. Where others might give in to anger, he was taught to master it. And yet, he is not untouched by what came before him. The actions of his brother, the legacy of Lin Kuei, and the pain tied to Scorpion's existence all rest on his shoulders. The difference is not that he feels less, it is that he chooses differently. Scorpion fights because he cannot let go. Sub-Zero fights so others do not have to suffer the same fate. One is driven by the pain that never ended. The other is shaped by pain, but refuses to let it decide what he becomes. And when pain defines you, it changes everything. How you move, how you fight. Because in the Crucible, origin is only the beginning. What matters next is what those wounds turn them into. Origins shape them, but they do not decide the outcome. Because pain is only potential. What matters now is how that pain is weaponized. When Scorpion enters a fight, it does not unfold like a duel. It erupts. His entire style is built around aggression, unpredictability, and the relentless pursuit of his target. There is no patience in his movements, no hesitation in his strikes. He fights like a man who has already died once and has nothing left to lose. Every motion carries weight. Every attack is meant to overwhelm, to break through the defenses before they can even stabilize. His abilities reinforce that chaos. Hellfire is not just a weapon, it is an extension of his existence, burning through his opponents with an intensity that reflects the torment he carries. His teleportation allows him to vanish and reappear without warning, collapsing distances instantly and forcing his opponent into constant reaction. And then there is the spear, the iconic chain that drags his enemies towards him, stripping away space, control, and any illusion of safety, or in his case, get over here! Scorpion does not give you time to think. He forces you into survival mode, where every second is spent trying to keep up with something that does not slow down. His greatest strength is pressure. He builds it, he sustains it, and he uses it to break his opponents mentally before they ever fall physically. But pressure is not enough. Not against someone like Sub-Zero. Where Scorpion is relentless, Sub-Zero is deliberate. Every movement is calculated, every strike placed with purpose. He does not rush forward blindly. He studies, adapts, and responds. His control over ice is not just offensive, it is strategic. He can freeze opponents in place, halt momentum entirely, and reshape the battlefield to his advantage in an instant. His ice constructs give him versatility that few can match. Weapons form and disappear as needed. Defenses appear exactly when required. And his infamous ice clone creates openings by punishing aggression. Against most opponents, this is enough to dictate the pace of the fight completely. And that's where the contrast becomes critical. Scorpion forces chaos. Sub-Zero controls it. In a direct exchange, this battle becomes a tempo. Scorpion wants the fight to last, overwhelming and suffocating. Sub-Zero wants it measured, controlled, and precise. One is constantly accelerating, the other is constantly stabilizing. If Scorpion gains momentum, he becomes nearly impossible to stop. His pressure compounds. His attacks chain together, and his opponent is dragged into a spiral that rarely ends well. But if Sub-Zero establishes control, the fight slows to his rhythm. Openings disappear. Mistakes are punished instantly, and what looked like chaos becomes predictable. And predictability is something that Sub-Zero thrives on. But this is not just about abilities. It is about mastery. Because both of these warriors are not just powerful, they are experienced. They have fought across realms against gods, demons, and warriors who would break lesser fighters instantly. They have adapted, evolved, and survived in ways that go beyond raw strength. The difference lies in how they apply that experience. Scorpion sharpens his into relentless pursuit. Sub-Zero refines his into absolute control. And when those two approaches collide, it does not become a question of who is stronger. It becomes a question of who breaks first. Because skill and power can decide a fight, but they do not decide a man. What truly determines the outcome is what they're fighting for. Alright, now we step into the moment everything has been building towards. This is where philosophy meets reality, and where everything they are finally collides. They've carried it long enough. The pain, the history, the weight of everything that brought them here. There is no more distance, no more time, only the fight. The air shifts before either of them moves. Cold spreads across the ground in thin, creeping layers of frost, cracking softly beneath Sub-Zero's feet as he steadies himself. Across from him, heat distorts the space itself, flames coiling and tightening around Scorpion like something alive, something waiting to be unleashed. For a moment, the world holds its breath, and then it breaks. Scorpion moves first. He does not step forward. He vanishes. A burst of flame tears through the space where he stood, and in that same instant, he reappears behind Sub-Zero, the chain already snapping forward with lethal precision, the spear cutting through the air, fast, direct, and unforgiving. Get over here! But Sub-Zero was already moving. The chain connects, not with him, but to the ice, a perfect clone that shatters on impact, exploding into frozen shards that scatter outwards. Scorpion does not pause. He can't. He's already shifting, already pressing forward, his attacks coming in waves meant to overwhelm before control can reestablish itself. Sub-Zero adapts instantly. He gives ground, but not control. Every step backwards is deliberate. Every movement is calculated. Ice forms beneath Scorpion's feet, allowing him just enough, forcing a fraction of hesitation. It's small, almost nothing. But that's all Sub-Zero needs. A single misstep. And that's when it happens. Sub-Zero pivots, his hands snapping forward as the temperature drops violently. Frost surges outward, catching Scorpion mid-motion, freezing him in place just for a moment. Not long. It never is with him. But long enough. The ice cracks. Hellfire erupts. Scorpion breaks free with a violent surge of flame, the explosion forcing Sub-Zero back as the battlefield shifts again, heat clashing against the cold in a violent collision of elements. There is no clean ground anymore, only instability, only pressure. Scorpion closes the distance again, faster this time, more aggressive. His strikes come heavy, relentlessly forcing Sub-Zero into defense. Blow after blow lands against forming ice barriers, each one of them fracturing further. The pressure is building now. This is where Scorpion thrives. But Sub-Zero does not break. He waits. He watches. And when the pattern reveals itself, he acts. Scorpion lunges, committing fully to the attack. Flames surging as he drives forward to end it. But this time, Sub-Zero does not retreat. He steps in. The shift is immediate, unexpected. Their attacks collide at close range, fire and ice erupting in a violent clash as Sub-Zero redirects the momentum instead of resisting it. His counter is precise, controlled, aimed not to overpower, but to interrupt, to disrupt the rhythm Scorpion depends on. And for the first time, Scorpion is forced to stop. Not for long, but long enough. Because in that moment, the fight changes. It is no longer just pressure versus control. It becomes adaptation versus will. Both of them are adjusting now. Scorpion pushing harder, faster, trying to break through before the control can finally settle. Sub-Zero is tightening his defense, narrowing the fight, forcing every exchange into something measured, something contained. The battlefield reflects that. Flames surge, then freeze. Ice forms, then shatters. Neither side holding dominance for long. Every advantage is temporary. Every opening is contested. And neither of them is backing down. Because this fight was never going to end quickly. Not like this. Not between them. Because when a battle reaches that point, it stops being about who can win. It becomes something about who is willing to lose everything to prove they can. And just like that, it doesn't end with a decisive blow. It ends with something far more fitting. Silence. Because a fight like this was never built for a clean conclusion. Not when both men carry something that cannot be measured in strength alone. Not when every strike is tied to memory, to loss, to something deeper than the moment itself. What we witnessed was not just a battle. It was a collision of everything they are, everything they've endured, and everything they refuse to let go of. Scorpion does not stop because he wins. Sub-Zero does not stand because he can overpower. They continue because neither of them can afford to be the one that breaks. That's the truth of it. Scorpion's fire will always burn as long as his past remains unsolved. His rage is not something that fades. It evolves. It reignites. It finds new reasons to exist. And you cannot defeat something that does not seek peace. And Sub-Zero's control will always hold on as long as he chooses it. His strength is not in domination. It is in restraint, in discipline, in the refusal to let the chaos around him dictate what he becomes. So who wins? The answer is neither. Because for one to truly win, the other would have to lose everything they stand for. Scorpion would have to let go of his vengeance. Sub-Zero would have to abandon his control. And if either of those things happen, they are no longer Scorpion and Sub-Zero. So the fight continues. Not here, not just tonight, but always. And that's the Crucible. Not just a place where the battles are fought, but where the ideas are tested. Because what we saw tonight was not just fire versus ice. It was vengeance versus restraint. Pain versus purpose. And the question that lingers long after the fight is over, where is the line? At what point does holding on become the very thing that destroys you? And at what point does letting go mean losing what made you fight in the first place? So now, we turn this to you. If you were in Scorpion's place, could you ever let it go? If you were the one carrying Sub-Zero's burden, could you always stay in control? And when everything is taken from you, do you become the fire, or do you become the one that survives it? Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Chaos Crucible.